Shelley, can you do roll call, please?
Mr. Mayor. District 1, Councilman Rios. Not here, but I understand. Councilman Pastor.
Present.
District 3, Councilman Letha is absent. District 4, Vice Mayor Stapleton.
Here.
District 5, Councilman Gonzalez.
Here.
District 6, Councilman Shipley.
Here.
Mayor Gameros.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Shelley. Please join me in prayer. Lord Jesus, we ask for your blessing over this meeting tonight. We ask for your guidance as we make decisions for financial budgets of the future of our city. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Mariano, can you lead us in the pledge, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First on the agenda, we have fiscal year 2021-2022 budget progress update, including general fund line item budget review.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, members, council. I'm going to start this off with a little set the stage on this, and then Jeannie's online to go over and answer any questions we have, and then we'll kind of wrap it up with the progress going from this point forward. So let's see, and I think Danny is throwing up the. But first off, we're going to do the slide presentation. Then we'll cut to Jeannie's screen, and we're going to do some fancy footwork here. Go back and forth. Okay, good.
You've had enough.
So
You swayed
That's your flag.
okay, motion to move on. That's all right. The so okay, and absolutely respectful of time. And so if you need him, if I go through this quickly, you have questions, let me know. If you're happy, I'll just keep going. And I know we want to get here by 7 o'clock. Okay.
And Shelley is making some hard copies too, I guess, for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and we got a little bit of conversation before we get to the actual line item.
Okay.
Here, so on this first slide, again, the budget is a moving target. It's a roadmap to where our money is, because always money coming in, leaving us, being spent. So this is a roadmap that is really not a snapshot at that time. So as of 5/28, 2021, our proposed pure general fund ongoing revenue. This is truly tax dollars and revenue that comes in every year. Is 11,113,281. Okay, that is what ongoing cost should be budgeted to. Just a update on some of the revenue projections, though. We have the possible passage of the 1.9 billion flat tax. Spoke to the league, and I think everybody knows, while if this comes in, it's going to do severe damage, between $250,000 and $350,000 a year cut in money that is collected on our behalf. It should not impact this budget, because the state shared is distributed on a 1.5 year lag. So what the money we're getting is not collected from this year. It's further back, so it wouldn't hit us for another budget cycle. Census impact on state shared funds, and actually when we put this slide together, we emailed the league, and they are expecting census numbers in in September of this year. They usually do an update on state shared funds when they get the census numbers in May, June. They're not getting those, so they're sticking with the numbers they have. So pretty much the state shared revenue numbers that were in the budget we first presented in March are going to hold. And they're not great. They're, but at least there's not going to be it'd be nice to have a raise. There's not going to be a dive in it. So we have consistency there. But this is something that we were worried about. So that covers 2 and 3. There has been an increase in the distribution of the ARPA, the American Recovery Program agenda. Jeannie, what is that? ARPA?
American Recovery Protection something, I think.
Okay. Yeah, we'll look that up in a second here. Funds. This is the money that came out, the rescue money. There's entitled cities and non-entitled city units. Globe share will increase from 1.7 million to 2.45 million, about a $700,000 increase. Many other municipalities like Goodyear went from 20 million to 10 million. I think Maricopa went from 12 million to 6 or 7 million. They did some shifting away for the bigger cities, what they call metropolitan areas, and they loaded up. No, they didn't do a 1-to-1 ratio, and they cut 10 million in Goodyear and give 700,000 to Globe. But it's money that's being distributed by the federal government to help us recover from COVID, and so we're happy for what we have, and we'll spend it wisely. We will deal with this in the upcoming budget, probably on the second meeting in June. Our beginning fund balance is higher than we had projected in March. It is now the fund balance that we are accepted and are working with is $4,277,876. Okay, we were a smidge under 3 million when we last looked, but as we worked through the budget and everything fell out, Jeannie did yeoman's work in going through to do good, solid projections of how much we're going to spend in this year's budget to the end. Anything that isn't spent that was budgeted falls back into the fund balance, and a lot of money fell back in. So that's kind of an update on the revenue projections, just so you know what's changing. Next slide, which I have the control of. So general fund. This is kind of a reminder for everybody, but this is the standard general fund talking points. Customarily, ongoing general fund revenues should be used for ongoing general fund expenses. And so things that money, things that you have every year, fuel, electricity, rent payments, salaries, benefits, those are ongoing costs, not one-time costs. And so ongoing funds should be used to pay for that. So that's, and now we have general fund, and just to contrast, enterprise fund. Enterprise fund, we run a utility. We provide water and wastewater services, and we have control of the fees that we charge for that, and we have a responsibility, especially with the WIFA loans, that we charge enough from our customers to pay for the cost of doing that. And so that differentiates from general fund. The biggest hit on general fund is fire and police, of course. So on our first round of department budgets, we went through and brought everybody in on a Zoom and said, okay, this is where you were last year, this is how much you spent now, what do you think you need, and where are your increases, what contracts will be added. We went through and did detailed, multi-hour meetings to get these numbers right. On our first round of department budget meetings, our general fund expenses were high. So we knew we had to at least take those down. You don't want to be taken from what I call our pure general fund costs. You don't want to be pulling from fund balance to do that. So we went through and instead of going and talking to everybody again, we isolated salaries, because you can't really percentage cut salaries, contracts, which, a contract for X item for 1 year is X amount of dollars. You can't percentage that down. Things like phones, you can't really percentage them down, insurance. But we took a percentage cut over things that were flexible, certain in those certain line items, and got it down to where we're within $38,000 of being balanced. On $11 million budget, we're about $38,000 apart. And I figured instead of messing with trying to tweak that last $38,000, we left it there. Now there's other things that will hit that general fund balance, and I'll explain that on the backside of the general line item. But I think that pretty much covers what you're going to do is Jeannie's going to walk you through the department budgets, and this is how she organizes the budget. This is where they code the budget. This is the meat and potatoes of what we live off of to make services happen for the people. And so on the backside, we'll come back and give you an update on the fund balance and how that's going to shake out. Okay. Now, just so you know, we have no increase in staffing in the way of numbers of people, and we have no increase in staffing in the way of any changes in pay. if and when we do that, that will come, and that will come out of probably be funded through a mechanism, most likely rescue funds. But for right now, we're just to get the baseline budget to show that if we had to continue services, we could, and this would be the budget would do that. So this is a starting point. Jeannie, do you want to share your screen or I'll change the slide. The slide just says Jeannie is to go over. So this is the point where council, if you have any questions, you look through the line item budget. Jeannie, do you want to throw it up there just so people know what we're looking at? And if you have anything that you had questions about. I don't want to go line by line. I don't think that would be productive. But you
Okay,
had this.
hold on. I'm going to pull up the one that we sent to council.
Yeah, the PDF. And I hope I'm not talking
And that's this. So this is our line item. This is what we mean by line item budget. Between all of the departments, there's over 700 individual lines. Our process is every single one of them. I pull reports off of Cassell and I get what the actual costs are through February 28th. As I explained in the other budget meeting, you have to have a starting point, and for all invoices to be in from vendors and all receivables to be in, if you go with 228, you're still waiting well into March to even start the budget process. So that's why that date's so early. You have to have a starting point. So I enter what the actual costs are in each line item as of February 28th. And then on the estimated, I analyze each line item and look and see what has hit that and what an educated guess would be that would still be coming in by the end of June, so I can get a total for the end of this current fiscal year. Then off of that, the projections, the proposed budget is made, and all of the salary items are done in a separate budget spreadsheet that's linked to the main model. And then all of the other items, it's just, look and see what the history was, what the trend is, talk to the department, see what they need. And we did that for every single one of these that are in this, that are in the general fund. Any questions?
And the blue the purple represents what will be CIP items. We kind of changed this up last year. We'll do a separate CIP schedule, which is money coming out of fund balance, and we put that in there. We don't put that in yet because now we're trying to balance the general revenue fund. But those blue holes you see, that will be filled. Just organizationally, it's easier for the directors to follow the budget when we have those built into the line item budget.
Communications at 3,000. What is that? What does that cover?
Which
Communications-
department was that?
I think it's in all. Is that Jeannie?
Yeah, each department has their own communication line.
And what Jeannie will do is go, okay, the phone bill is $49 a month times, 7 users times, and she gets it down to, we don't want to just put fluff in the budget because fluff robs us of ability to do things with that money if you just pad it. So we run a tight budget. But I always tell directors, we run a tight budget, but if you miss something or something goes over, we'll come back and we'll make it happen. I'd rather run a tight budget and have good, strong projections. And if we got to come back and say, hey, we missed something or something ran over, we'll come back to council and say, we got to fix this. But if you can't get a department to do a tight budget unless you have kind of a little bit of a parachute or a escape route.
And so, Mayor, I think you were looking at the 3,000 budget for mayor and council communications. And so then what I do is I look at that account in Cassell. That's what you're seeing now. I get where it is as of what date, and then project that cost on out. So that's I projected $3,005. Now on every account that has Verizon in it, it's like Paul said. I pull up the most recent Verizon bill. I look and see what departments are being charged what. Is it 4 phones at $40 times 12 months, whatever, and do the math. Communications also will have Sparklight for internet expense and CenturyLink in it too.
And then one of the other biggest items is the contracts and consultants, and those have the cost for anything from $5,000 to and or $10,000 for a website to the larger contracts we run. And that's all under consultant as a person, contract as a service. Although sometimes we go back and forth in how we interpret that. And there's not too many miscellaneous or, items in there. I know that there's one council member who's wary of that.
So if there's no items on a line,
For some reason, we didn't budget anything for that.
okay. So what if you have to do something in that, like grant match? Like you don't have any grant match projection.
Usually the grant match will come out of a CIP fund. We do a whole grant budget line item. And if we need to match, a grant is predominantly a one-time expenditure, so we match it out of a one-time fund balance expenditure. And now the rules of, I don't know what the official name of the rules are, but within a budget, if you over budget, let's say in communication, but you under budget in PP&E, let's go the other way. Let's say you over budget in PP&E, which we were very strong on that, and under in communication, you can move money within your budget to cover costs. You can't move money from another budget to within a budget to cover. That requires council approval. And normally, if a department needs more money, and this, we'll come and we'll pull it from fund balance, from the contingency line item, and move it in there. And we do, like when we buy something like contingency is there for purchases or costs that we either did not know we would need to spend, and or we overspent and we did had a higher cost in an area. One of the things we were looking at, chlorine is going through the roof. Plywood's going expensive. Fuel is up and down, and so we realize we may have some issues there. Whether the market will shake out and what will happen.
So we do run a really tight budget with all of the analysis that's put into it, but we do have also our 15% contingency policy. And so this $1,673,000 that you see there represents 15% of the overall expenditure proposed budget. And that amount is really just parked there. It's, if we need to use it, we will. Last year we had $1,655,000 in contingency. We ended up using $215,000 of it. So
does that money roll over, or
No, the contingency does roll over. Yeah, and that's a really big thing. This is something that Jeannie and I go through. She pulls the money out of the fund balance, puts it in the contingency, and you got to realize that while it's in there, hasn't been spent yet. It's parked there. It's waiting to be allocated. In a perfect world, we'll have done a perfect budget and we'll have perfect foresight to know what's going to happen, and we'll pull nothing from the contingency, and that money just falls back in. What I'm shooting for is a budget that at the end of the day, when you pass this, is going to maintain a $3 million fund balance. Okay, that's our rainy day fund, and that's what we kind of like is that $3 million. Now I will tell you, of that $3 million, 1.6 will be parked in the contingency line item. And if we go and we spend from that, and let's say we get You know, we're looking at the Silver King building, and I think we're going to pull that from this budget cycle. There may be something that we have no idea is going to be an opportunity, but we wouldn't walk past it, and then we will pull that from the contingency, and that will whittle down our fund balance under the 3 million. But again, last year, even with all the crazy things that happened, you know, all the pandemic and everything, we still only pulled 200,000 out of a 1.6 million contingency. So that's still pretty good. And
So when we do a project, I know like when Jerry does a lot of road projects,
yes,
he always specifies that there's a contingency
yes.
in the contract. Now, is that where that money, is that where?
No, this is a general fund contingency executive committee. I'm sorry, executive. The enterprise budget has, I think we're sitting about 5 million in enterprise fund balance.
Paul, the answer to the question is no. We just put that extra 10 or 15% contingency in when we take it to council in the event that there's a change order, and we won't have to take it back to council to get approval for the additional change order. And we don't very often come up where we are using the contingency in those contracts, but that amount would fall under the contractual services line, and it will all just roll back into the fund balance.
So contingency is money is allocated but not actually spent yet, but it could be spent. And so
Yeah, you can't spend it if you don't put it in the budget, so. It's just in the event we need it.
Were you gonna give us that figure on enterprise funds?
that we just hammered that one out today. That'll be we're doing general fund enterprise will be done on the 8th, and on the 8th also we'll do so enterprise line item will be done on the 8th.
Okay.
And we just went through and finished that off so we can get it in the packet. We'll also do general fund CIP on the 8th. We won't be doing enterprise, the streets, sewer, all that until probably the 22nd. I think we'll do CIP back then at that point. Again, we're trying to keep the meeting short and we're working through this very methodically, but
One other,
Good, Mike.
so how many contingency funds are in the, made it sound like there's more than one.
so there's a fund balance for general fund of 4.2 now, and we'll budget up to down to 3 million of it. And Jeannie, what's the contingency for?
Yeah, I'm not comfortable saying what the fund balance is yet in the enterprise one, since we just hammered those out with the departments today. We do have a contingency line item in water and a separate one in sewer. So once I've done the final calculations and looked really hard at all of that stuff, then I'll have those numbers finalized.
Thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Mariano, go ahead.
regarding the items under community organizations, are we receiving regular reports from those organizations? I don't know. That's why I'm asking the question.
So Jeannie, you want to talk about the bed tax and the quarterly reports and how you bring those forward? Did you hear the question?
Okay, the bed tax is separate from community. Oh, I'm sorry. The bed tax, it's a pass-through. Whatever we collect, we pass that on to the 5 organizations when they request the reimbursement. We do have requirements that they have to file certain paperwork with each reimbursement request. And that's a very basic financial statement form we came up with. They need to file a copy of the minutes from their board approving their bed tax distribution request, and they need to file with that an activity report for the quarter showing what they have done during the quarter.
So 4 times a year, they submit that, and they submit that with the request for the money, for the payment.
And who receives that?
Council.
Council does receive.
And it goes on,
Consent.
consent, and you can look at it, and if you're happy with it, everybody just votes a consent. If you have a question, you pull it off.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
I
satisfied.
attach the reports that I get from the requesting.
And Jeannie does audit them, and so that she keeps them, from getting, make sure they're accurate and make sense, and there's no errors on there.
Thank you. That brings me up to speed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Mariano, there's, on, what we do also is we have a council member appointed to each one of these groups that sits in their meetings.
Okay.
And, so we do have an opening in Downtown Association if, might look at it if you're interested.
I knew you'd put me to work. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That's all for me. I'll stop sharing the screen.
And so, if we can throw the last slide of the slide presentation. There. Okay, so this kind of outlines what we've already kind of talked about. It's gonna be 124,839. We get money from the county through the county property tax to help fund that. And then Active Adult Center, we contribute 100,564 is what we're estimating will contribute to that operation this year. But I was going to say there's a lot of grant money that comes in there, and those two are kind of special budgets that that Jeannie puts together with all the county, working with the county and the Health and Human Services people who help fund those. So those transfers will happen after all the fund balance transfers. We'll still have a $4,015,270 dollar fund balance. We traditionally in the tightness of what we've done, we don't have the luxury of pulling one-time CIP items out of ongoing revenues. We just don't have those ongoing revenues. That ongoing revenue is that tight area. But we've always managed to save a little off of each. We budget. We don't spend it all. We keep that fund balance built up, and each year we spend upwards of $800,000 out of that fund balance to pay for the CIP items. Okay. I don't know. I've looked through the CIP requests. We haven't worked through the process of figuring out what's a go, what's a no-go, what's a maybe. But I can tell you that we have the opportunity, if council approves, to spend up to $1,015,270. If you're comfortable with that, you got to weigh the spending of the fund balance versus the needs of the city for those one-time costs. Okay, now there's this budget cycle, we got a lot of other sources of money, and so we'll have to balance those, and you'll see those all together. You'll see all the requests and all the sources, and then we'll determine how much we want to pull from that fund balance. But I will tell you that I will not recommend that we go over that 1 million for CIP spending, and that will keep what we like to have, what this council and previous councils like to have, is maintain that $3 million fund balance. That's our nest eggs. A lot of cities don't have that much money. I know Payson, for a while, they were sitting on about a $400,000 fund balance, and that made it rocky because something happens. You just don't have the money. Okay. But be aware that from that 3 million, we're going to park that 15% of the expenditures, and that would be 1,673,513. We're going to park that in the budget as possible contingency spending. Okay, and I know this council, when we say it's coming out of fund balance, we're pulling out of fund balance, that's red flags, and everybody's like, is this really, we're taking from the piggy bank, and it's eking that down. And so we don't like to pull it from the fund balance, but sometimes, it's like, it's an opportunity or it's a cost we just got to have. So, but it will be parked there, but, that is just the structure of that budget. And again, we pulled, Jeannie, what, 200,000 we pulled out of last year's contingency, and the other 1.4 fell back in.
Yes.
And that's where we got the 4,270,000, that's at 4.2 million, is because we were thrifty with last year's fund balance. I'm sorry, last year's contingency. And that's,
Paul, on the 15%, do we get updates on that? It worries me that, we have 1 million in CIP, and we got to make decisions on, if we spend that 15%, we're down to $1.5 million in our general fund, plus our CIP. So we really need to be, understand what's being spent, because there's sometimes expenditures that are done that don't require council approval.
not from fund balance.
Not contingency,
Contingency.
that has to be
There's no-
approved from council.
There's no way legally we can't do that.
Okay.
Okay.
They all contingency requests go before council.
Yeah, no, and what you're probably misperceiving is where we can move money around within a budget, and we took, we had nothing happened in this project, and so we within the department, we took that money from one project, put it in another, and then had the money to find that. This is something that we do, but no, legally that fund balance is protected. And Jeannie, I was thinking about this. I meant to bring it to you, but there's no reason why we can't do quarterly updates on the fund balance and the contingency spending. I know that we've done, not on a regular basis, but there have been requests, and we brought those forward on that.
I maintain a spreadsheet that shows every time an item was taken to council and when it was approved and how much. So yeah, that'd be easy to provide a copy of that report whenever.
Now and there's times where that, you could say you want to take that money that's sitting in the fund balance and put it to work for you. We did that with the PSPRS, that $1 million payment, and we reaped dividends. We're down from 70% in PD down to about 55% of how much additional money we have to spend. Fire is a little bit higher, I think 63. That's my figures in my head. But that money has paid dividends, and so that money was better spent. And so I would say that, we can't be totally afraid of spending something out of the contingency, but we just have to be very thoughtful and make sure it's really something that the cost of not spending that money is greater than the cost of spending that money. And we can't confuse that with the grant funding also. You will see, and we'll load in grant funding, and like we're still going to carry forward the bridge money. We spent very little of that 2.81 million in the bridge money because we're just under design. We're waiting for construction. So that'll be carried forward, and that'll make our budget look really big, but that's just money that we're waiting to spend. Grant money, you could have a grant budget of, as much as you think you might be able to, you take what you think you might be able to get and then add about 50%, because who knows, the money is coming from all different sources. But if we don't have a grant allocation that we can put that in, if we had a flat $30 million budget and somebody wanted to give us 20 million, we wouldn't have the capacity to take that, because it has to be, we have to have budgeted to receive that. And that's why the grant budget line item, and it's unfunded. We'll say we are budgeting that we may receive up to $5 million in grant funding. We don't have $5 million. We don't know where that money might come. But again, that's like a safety net that if somehow,
You're just trying to cover yourself.
yeah, some employee wins the lottery and wants to donate, to the city, Fernando.
The city.
So that's you'll see that built into the budget, and you're kind of seeing this as we chug along and we do these steps. It'll make much more sense when we get to when you see the full budget presented on the 22nd. What's the second meeting in June? Yeah, 22nd. That'll be the tentative budget.
Paul, did you get a number from the reimbursement check from Risk Pool on the amount we're going to get received from them?
Jeannie?
Yes, I did. Let's see if I can find it.
That's in this budget also, the reimbursement, okay.
It is, yes. Let's see.
And Jeannie, when you're done with that, I got another question.
Yes, thank you. I apologize, everybody. It's not been a good day at my household, so we're trying to recover.
The insurance dividend is 126,279.
How much was that?
126,279,
Yes,
and that's for us being thrifty, safe, being.
but it's for the whole pool.
Oh, I thought it was just us.
No, it's for the whole pool.
But Globe did pretty well with the risk
Yeah.
pool, and we got a pretty large amount. Some
Yeah.
cities didn't get any, and
Oh, okay,
very
yeah.
little amount, yes.
No, and I think we John and Public Works and everybody does real careful about trying to make sure that we don't have what the risk pool if something were to happen and we were to make an error and it was to cost damages, a water line that broke and flooded a house, there'd be a claim on that, and that would go. If somebody was injured in a construction project because we didn't put the right barricades or something like that, and there was a claim against the city, those eat away at our risk pool. But we've, knock on wood, we've done well and had good luck. And the other, Jeannie, where are we at on the payments from Miami?
They're current, and that's almost paid off. All we have to balance going into the next year is 6,269.
Yeah,
Sales tax.
that and that was from the mistaken
Sales tax.
sales tax they were submitting. A couple of businesses were submitting to Miami because the post office was Miami, and so they figured, but they were in the Globe city limits, but they were sending the checks to Miami for their TPT, and our auditor helped track that down. We have an auditor that we have on, I think, 24,000 a year that we send out to look at different areas and catch non-payment.
Go ahead, Mike.
I don't see the rebuilding the swimming pool.
No,
That-
the swimming pool, the community pool, will be a CIP item, and that will be on the 8th with a general fund CIP. And we do intend to bring forward an item of $500,000 from city funds to put towards rebuilding of that, and then we'll have a discussion about how we close the gap on that. And so that'll,
Price on that is 1.08.
well, I think, yeah, 1.08 is where we're at. And then we also have some suggestions and some a presentation on additional recreational upgrades in the area of the community park, the community center, and other parks. So we're going to have a full presentation that not a week from tonight, 6 days from tonight.
And Paul, we received 234,000 from Miami on that.
234 from Miami. And what was it? I'm sorry, Vice Mayor.
I'll hold off.
Yeah,
So,
no, there's a it'll be a, like I say, that is a proper place, and we'll be asking for council to approve that 500,000 in the budget. And well, and this is to give direction to spend it. Again, the approval will be in the tentative and then the final, but we're taking direction for what you want to see in a public setting. And so if you were to redirect any line items or redirect any of the things that we talk about, you have that option to say, we want to redirect it, and so that would be the place to do it. And Mr. Mayor, Councilman Gonzalez, did you want to talk about the one thing we talked about? I can phrase this. So, Councilman Gonzalez had a question, being the new to the city about setting up locations and times that council members are available for office hours. And I know that many locations have it where, you know, between 3 and 5 on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I can be found in my office, and if you'd want to walk in, and it's kind of done more so on the county side of that. And we had a discussion realizing that City Hall did not have that opportunity, and so asked me to do a little research on that. And we do know that is absolutely something that will be available once the Michelson building is up and running, but that is a year away. The second conversation was, is there a way that we could put something in the budget to maybe find, rent a location or facilitate having some office space that council could use? But the other conversation we had was to talk about possibly setting aside some time at the library and doing some office hours down there. And so we're going to talk about that. But I don't think there's a budget implication because there's not a lot of temporary or light office space. The other thing we could do is go to our partners with the bed tax and look at the chamber, the train depot, even the old courthouse. Although the office facilities in there where you have you know, instead of being a big room, but something that is comfortable for a conversation. And so that's something that we had talked about, but I don't know that we need to make any changes in the budget on that.
Where I'm coming from. I'm you get on the block. My one night I'll be holding. All the from the city. We all talk about this. Outreach, talk to your constituents. I don't know what kind of thing. I think they went long out. Sometimes, you don't listen to stuff. They may not have time to or counsel. I'm still get to think it, but I'm starting to be available to our constituents. Do that. Throughout the state, most local levels of government every county go from the county office. I'm not even looking for that. I just think Monday. But then come more time. I think all of it. Where do we find? I don't like to make look. So we will want to talk to me. All I'm saying is off space. One night I take together
So,
I'm sorry, I apologize.
so so that's something that I don't think is going to have a minimum cost impact, but something that I like say is around the corner and we're going to try to work out. So just want to make sure we didn't, if there's no impact on the budget, then that's a good thing. And then that meet and greet will be 6 o'clock tomorrow night,
Yes,
St. Peter's.
yes, that's St. Peter's, 6 o'clock.
Can I add a comment to, so what we've done before, but I know that there's security things and I don't know what their protocols are now, but we used to have a key and then we'd check to see if the conference room is available. Then we'd come in and then we'd lock up when we left. But I don't know what the guidelines are of who has a key or not. I have an office, so I don't need that. But,
Yeah.
but some people, I mean, that might be something to consider.
Right, and I think this we're going to be doing the strategic planning session wrap up. Is the other item we'll be talking about in a couple weeks, or the 8th, and we might want to talk more about that. But if any council members have any desire of how we can better support you making contact with your members of your district or mayor to your city, conference rooms open. We don't have to be there, but we can facilitate, same as we're doing with Mariano. We can do, I know, Councilman Rios, I know we want to talk about doing something. We want to do a traffic town hall or a traffic summit. We want to do the homeless event. We can find ways to make that happen. But to the key issue, we try to limit the number of keys just because it makes it less complicated. If we lose one, we have to make less copies of that. But I will tell you, the people around here till 7 o'clock at night most of the time, well, usually me. And so if you did want to have an after hours meeting, let us know and we'll either get you a key or get you in here.
Fernando, that's what I use numerous times. I use a conference room, I call, and that's where I meet people in there, which works out. But it's been during the day mostly for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have self-closing doors. So if anybody wants to set up after hours meetings or schedule with Shelley during the day.
Other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, that's all I have on the budget. Oh.
The only question I would ask, you mentioned using the library,
Yes.
meeting space. How's that going to work? The library's open for certain hours.
Well, with what Councilman Gonzalez is talking about, doing 5 to 7, so it would be closed by then.
Yeah,
And-
but will you have somebody from the library there to,
Haven't gotten that far.
okay? Because Rael's sitting there giving me the eye, and I
Yeah,
thought I better
and-
ask a question.
We're still spitballing.
Before we got to committee meeting.
We're gonna sit with her after the meeting and have a little post meeting
Okay.
talk.
Yeah, we're still spitballing. Let's give us a break.
Okay.
So we're ready for item 2.
Yes. Item 2.
Review of magistrate court budget, functions, and compliance.
Okay.
Who's
And
that
so
one?
I'm gonna start the presentation, but Mr. Mayor, members of council, we have 2 distinguished guests here tonight. We have the Honorable Judge Perlman and the Honorable Judge Reardon, who are both going to be invited up to talk about this at a certain point. And it's built into the presentation, so I'll call you both up at a certain time. So they're not totally caught flat-footed. So let me do my. Okay. So, background. Again, the city of Globe operates a magistrate court. The magistrate court, the level that we've set is to hear all city code. So if you violate mainly blight or weeds or cars, anything that the code enforcement writes a citation for, or civil traffic violations. and I'm not an expert on this. They are civil traffic violations, pretty much, speed not reasonable and prudent, turn violations, those things. I know what's not: criminal speed and DUI. Okay, DUI is a criminal violation, so it's pretty much below those violations. There it is. So criminal traffic, misdemeanors, and felonies are dealt with by the justice or superior courts. I don't know the split on that. If you have questions, you can ask our experts. The magistrate judge is hired by council, and his contract is included as part of the budget line item for the magistrate court. And it could be him or her. The city can provide a court facility or co-locate with the justice or Supreme Courts. City of Globe has a history, we've done both. At times we've been our own independent magistrate court, and at times we've co-located. I know we ended in 2014. Judge Ketterman, we were using him, and then we brought this back. So we've done both here. Our magistrate court under Judge Perlman is functioning professionally and effectively. We're up and running doing that, and the cost is $175,000 annually. And then the second slide has the budget. Okay, and this is the same budget that was in your presentation. Although, Jeannie, I don't know if you're still there. I think this actually was the same one because it has been modified. It had been a 2 full-time, and now we're at 1 full-time and 1 30-hour benefited position. So it's taken down a little bit of money there.
It is the current budget that's in the slide.
Okay, so it's the same one, and you've seen that, but we would throw it on there, and you would see so salary and wages is what the court staff would be, and then the contractual services, that would be the number for the magistrate themselves. Okay. Let's see here.
Oh, you don't have no revenues though,
No.
because the reason that we moved away from our agreement with the magistrate to do it, or the justice of the peace to do it, was because we weren't getting any enforcement. And so we stopped issuing tickets because it seemed like everybody got let go. We couldn't get our code taken seriously. So we basically pulled it back and said, we'll do our own magistrate. And so there was a difference in what we earned when we did it ourselves versus what we were earning when we weren't doing it ourselves.
And so to a point, I kind of want to frame this conversation on what is the best way to handle the magistrate duties. And money does come into it, and the collecting of fines. But I think I'd rather talk about the fine collection and that money at the very tail end. There's 2 issues. There are certain fines. Traffic tends to supply a lot more money than code enforcement, just because we'd rather have people spend the money on their house than to pay the city. But I think I'm kind of framing this between what I know about the differences between the 2 philosophies. But I think at the end we can delve into some of the reasons we did switch back from 2014 to here. And it sounds like because you were here, I wasn't. Sounds like one of the significant reasons is they weren't collecting it, or they weren't sending it to us. They were collecting it and keeping it.
It's just that at the time I felt like justice of the peace gets elected.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're lenient to somebody, they're like, oh, he was cool to me, so he let me slide on my ticket. And so it just felt like that happened a lot. And then our law enforcement got frustrated, and they just weren't writing tickets anymore. So we're like,
well,
okay.
Yeah, and that goes into that oversight, and that broad oversight, because we're not
And I'm not saying that he would do that. I'm not.
No.
But that's the way it felt.
That is kind of the fuzziness of this, because council needs to let the court do their judgment the way they see fit, but there are trends. And so that's when you see a big trend, that's when you make the change. But you're not saying this person yes, this person no. You're just saying as a rule, how strict or how supportive or their philosophy of how they, some people write everybody they pull over. It's like the ticket's going to make the difference. And some people just like getting pulled over is enough to rattle somebody to say, oh, I'm not going to do this again. So it's a philosophy, but we're going to, hopefully we'll dive into this. If we don't get your question answered, let's talk about it at the end. So, let's see here. So co-location option. Over the past year, I was approached by Judge Reardon, and we had multiple conversations about cost savings that could happen if we co-located. At the time, I had not even thought about it, did not realize we could do that, although I knew it was out there. It was something we were here doing in the magistrate. We also discussed future security cost increases, and we are watching those and tracking those. And just for the record right now, the budget that we presented covers the needs of the city to make our court secure. What gets us off the hook so much is that we are operating at such a low level. City code and civil traffic does not require the massive amounts of security that these higher up. No one comes from the jail to be arraigned or to be heard. And I don't know my language right, but we have brought a budget forward that includes running the court for the next year based on the cost. We know our court is in compliance with the central court and with the administrator of the courts, that we have met our requirements. And Judge Perlman will talk about what we did to make sure we're up to speed. The city would save up to $52,000. That's if we had 2 full-time. I think right now still we could render a savings about $42,000 if we were to co-locate. Okay, so there's a money advantage, and but all the magistrate operations would move to the Superior Court complex. And so the kind of having this are just as much as we have the water office, and come and do your permits, and the one-stop shop we have here. We have the magistrate office, we have the window, you come to court here. This would all go to the county complex on Ash. So Judge Reardon, we talked a lot about this, and I know you're passionate about this. I'm going to invite Judge Reardon to talk about the benefits, and the co-location would be to put our magistrate, make Judge Reardon the magistrate also, and he would hear our cases. But you get to jump to the microphone. And if you see the little notes on there, it says 3 to 5 minutes. But
Mr. Mayor, members of council. So there was a delay. Some of the questions that came up in discussion with Paul, why now and why come forward with this? So the northern half of the county, this is a process that's taken place. Judge Little has the Star Valley Magistrate Court and the Payson Magistrate Court co-located. I also take care of the Winkleman criminal cases. Judge Perlman serves as their magistrate for their civil as well. There's this trend across the state of co-location. Part of that is those security provisions, and there is compliance with the minimum standards. There's some arguments, and I won't delve too hard into them, but the idea that because it's civil traffic, that there's somehow less an opportunity for somebody to enter a courthouse and cause a security risk. Sergeant Valenzuela will probably tell you, or the news or any television articles, civil traffic or traffic stops, very contentious. I have sentenced people to jail and have far less of a reaction out of them than I do when I have to tell them that their driving is improper and they have violated the law. Nobody wants to hear that. So there's that source there. The current processes in place that are in place regarding the security side of it. If it's at the Superior Court complex, the defendants are required to enter through a magnometer entry race screening. We're a little bit more secure in that regard. We don't have staff, court staff, that is providing that service if necessary. The other idea was I wanted to get settled into my role before I wanted to come before the board. When we're talking about judicial philosophies, I'll be completely upfront with you. Judge Perlman and we've had discussions. He appears regularly before me on civil cases. We've had many conversations. I feel that we have pretty similar ideologies when it comes to fairness and equity and application of the law. As Paul just alluded to, for civil traffic versus city ordinance, I think it's more important that we work with community members to improve, as Judge Perlman has done a phenomenal job doing. That's the goal and philosophy with me. If I ramble too much, I just realized I haven't eaten today, so forgive me. Lots of coffee. At risk of rambling too long, I don't know, I'd maybe just defer to some questions if you have of me beforehand, and maybe that would be simpler.
Questions or comments for Mike?
So Judge, basically you're saying, would Judge Perlman work for you? Okay, works for the city. How does it work with Rebecca from Miami?
So,
Is there a difference there or?
There is. So, as far as contracted services, with Rebecca's circumstance and the co-location with the Miami magistrate, I guess I'll have to walk it back a little bit. So she served in that capacity since 1998. That contract, that agreement's been in place for that period of time. And she is actually a full-time employee and is number 3 in my organization. So I still have oversight, and she is a full-time employee, county employee, and swipes in and out for her magistrate services. But as I had alluded to earlier, that this is a practice that is taking place across the state in rural jurisdictions where there's co-location. You do run into that issue where they've allowed, and it creates issues, and this is one of the things that Paul has alluded to, and this is a problem that could present itself. I would serve under this operation, or this option, I would serve as your magistrate. Reason being, there have been issues across the state with justice courts and co-locations of municipal courts where the justice of the peace is ousted, and the council, you still retain the right to appoint in terms of the contract with the county. But the sitting JP is ousted, and they retain the current that JP, and it creates a number of operational issues within the office. I'm not saying that's the case with Judge Perlman, but it is my preference. And after having discussion with multiple JPs and a few administrators in the counties in which this co-location has occurred, my preference would be that I serve as the magistrate, just to maintain that control. So moving forward, and then obviously if you get to a point as counsel where you are concerned or displeased, there is a conversation, and it is that uncomfortable conversation about if it needs to go back versus it remaining with the justice court. So that is an absolute negative. That is a reality, and full transparency. Everything has operated flawlessly. That was not my intention either, as Paul's talked about when bringing this forward. It is really the dollars and cents. I took a look at your budget as posted online, kind of eyeballed that, and saw that there was an opportunity to perhaps save the city money with the co-location.
So I would assume that your court has a much higher volume of cases that you have to deal with, or fractions, or whatever it is that you're doing?
Correct. So for criminal, I can give you those numbers. So the last available numbers that I have would be from 2019 into 2020. And so we had 5,850 case filings. 3,600 of those roughly were civil traffic. Some of those were civil lawsuits with the threshold of $10,000, some small claims hearings. about 1,200 criminal misdemeanors. As far as what I presume the question is going to be is, what does that do for caseload for me? So the last available data that I was able to procure for the Globe Magistrate Court was there was roughly, it ran up to 2018. I'm sure there's more recent available. But at that time, there were 400 case filings. That included, so that was civil traffic and about 64 city ordinance violations. So in terms of breakdown, civil traffic, as Paul has alluded to also, is, there's a significant percentage of that never gets to me, in that they may resolve that with defensive driving school prior to ever even appearing in court. They may appear one time for an arraignment. We give them that option. And then another significant percentage of that takes DDS and it goes away. So there's a very minimal impact in terms of workload for me. The intent was, we already had some mock calendars in place. So we just kind of mirror what is in place now. Would have designated times for Globe Magistrate Court, just as you do here in my court.
Ready?
Thank you, Mayor. Judge Reardon, you had mentioned that this is a trend statewide, this practice of doing the co-locate. Can you explain why that is happening?
So some of it was the security provisions. A lot of rural or outlying areas are not as proactive as the city of Globe has been with the protections that they have placed or put into place. So there's that compliance with the bare minimum, right? So there's right now, and I don't have it before me, but bare minimum compliance has been an issue for some of the further outlying areas. So security costs were significantly higher for those areas. The other is it becomes, and I'm probably breaking some sort of trade secret here, but part of that is it becomes much simpler for administration. So the presiding superior court judge of each county is responsible for administrative oversight over all limited jurisdiction courts, and that includes magistrate courts. There's no exemption. Merely because you only hear a certain case type. You still are, there's provisions in terms of case flow, a number of cases, number of hours provided for services, but there are some outlying areas that couldn't even comply with the bare minimum standards. That is my understanding of why that has become a trend.
So the main thrust on this is security.
Security and cost. In this instance, when I talked about timing and opportunity, with Penny retiring, with the number of case filings that are coming in, there would be no requirement to have two full-time clerks or two clerks, period, for the number of case filings. Other than here, obviously you need to have coverage throughout the week, and so if Debbie is on vacation or sick leave, somebody has to be here. Whereas with my office, with the co-location, I have 8 full-time staff members, and so we can fill that gap at a lesser cost. We don't have to pay for an FTE with benefits and all of that.
Okay. Thank you.
And just as I touched on that, just real briefly, one other thing I wanted to touch on as far as with Debbie and the contract, if we were to move forward, it would not be how it was in the past. And I did want to absolutely take into consideration her workflow and life. Her responsibility would be solely Globe Magistrate business. She would not be working with Justice Court case filings. She would not be working and covering in the courtroom for Justice Court purposes. She would be solely responsible for Magistrate Court, and she would answer to me. There would be my court manager is responsible for county staff. There is no oversight for Ms. Mayo, or Mrs. Mayo, excuse me.
I have a question. Yeah. Thank you for being here, Jordan. And I did have a conversation with Jordan when this subject did come up, and I appreciate the opportunity to get some answers. Some of the things I have, my thinking is that, you know, an elected official, you guys are ran every 2 years, or is it 4 years? 4 years, okay. So in those 4 years, you know, if and your ideology may fit the same as Judge Perlman's, but what if we get an elected official that's in there and it really doesn't fit the style of the city of Globe? And here we are back again battling, you know, what situation you guys had in 2014, apparently. I didn't know what the issue was, but I'm glad you explained that. I didn't know why they went away from it at that time.
Well, we were trying to take action on one of Dr. Wiltz's buildings, and we couldn't even get them to open the file. You know, it's like, okay, so I had them cite them again, and then they called back and said, well, why'd you do that? I'm like, because you didn't do your job the first time, so we thought maybe you needed a reminder. And but yeah, and now I don't sense that that's the case. And the other thing, the other concern I had was, you know, if I know somebody, I can appeal my ticket and they might cut me a break and off I go. And it just seemed like I just kept hearing that over and over, that, you know, if you know somebody, you can get off. And so that was, and I don't sense that can really happen here. Maybe it can, but I don't sense that. And so that was my concern. And that was what was going on. That's what it felt like was going on then. And once we brought it in-house, it seemed to move much faster, much quicker. And so that's...
So, you know, there's not a whole lot that I can do to assuage that fear for you, other than to just give a few examples. You know, and to cautiously do so without any negativity towards any of my predecessors who all served. One of my priorities coming in was case filing, their case management. There was a decent backlog when I took office, and part of that was I just adopted some of the models. There's some best practices that are available, and merely implementing those has done wonders. You know, a criminal case, when I'd come in, there were a handful of them that were on their 8th pretrial setting. So that we're talking almost 10 months for a criminal misdemeanor. And my concern with that is, where's your sense of justice as a victim? Mm-hmm. If it takes a year to prosecute a criminal misdemeanor, you know, what does that mean to the Circle K clerk that called the police on that individual that trespassed and created a scene and or threatened the clerk? And then 10 months later, maybe we have a case. So we just implemented much shorter time frames, and we have a guide that's provided by the Arizona Supreme Court, the time standards. And so the current model is, you know, you get arrested by the police, they set a court date 30 days out, you come see me for arraignment. We set it for a pretrial conference. At that pretrial conference, the state has to provide their disclosure. You know, then they have an additional pretrial conference to consider what the state is going to utilize to prosecute them. At that next pretrial conference, we're having conversations about, we're either going to set this for trial, or you're going to resolve it via plea agreement or plea to the court. So instead of 10 months, we've cut that back to, depending on the cases, anywhere from 3 to 4 months, from arrest to a trial or resolution. And the other thing that I guess I can throw out is, you know, justice is blind, and if you appear before me, and if I hope it's none of you, but you will all be given the same opportunity as anybody else in the community. That's important to me. There have been elected officials. There have been those that are department directors, who I will not name, that have all had to appear, and they're held to the same standards as anybody else. I think that is key. I'll get off this up. It's a lot longer than 5 minutes. Sorry, Paul.
It's good, though. And the other concern I have too is, you know, I know Judge Perlman, and it's not a concern, but I've seen the professionalism, and I guess as we make a decision, we got to weigh, is it really worth the savings and the money to do away with a system we have in place right now? You know, I think we run a very professional court here. It's a fair process. It's a firm process, I believe, and I know Judge Berman also shows a compassion and, a lot, especially in code enforcement and trying to get some of these blight issues resolved. And I don't know, so it's a tough issue. You really weigh whether it's worth the savings or to disrupt what you have with an unknown future with an election to change different ways of thinking. But those are my comments.
Mr. Mayor. So which office in the state court systems reviews your actions in your court?
So the Administrative Office of the Courts at the Arizona Supreme Court.
What do they do exactly? Can you,
So we are subject to, as are the magistrate court, all courts, limited jurisdiction courts across the state are subject to a triannual audit for financials. So that has gone through, that we are in compliance with minimum accounting standards as set forth by the Arizona Supreme Court. They're typically, I like to think that they're a little bit higher than what some people are accustomed to. Additionally, we have operational reviews. Now, those are typically at random, but I can assure you that I have not had one during my term yet, but I will have one within a span of 4 years. Every limited jurisdiction court is going to have them come in and review your work. They typically allow a period of time to take place because when I came in, I'm carrying the previous judge's cases, and so that is not my decision making, and that is not my operation. Now enough time has eluded, and the case types are new enough that it's been mine from cradle to grave. So that is the process. They come up for, I believe it's a week, maybe two, and they have carte blanche access to our files and pull them as they see fit and review them.
it's good to know. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions for Judge? Thank you, Judge, for
Thank you.
being here, okay?
But let me just hit that last bit. All of that being said, Judge Perlman does a phenomenal job, and you guys do have a decision to make. But if it's not the right fit, not the right fit. I just wanted to present an option.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I do have one other kind of question. So one of the issues when we tried to move the magistrate back was the investment it was going to take to get it reignited
Back to the city?
back to the city. You know, because now we had to carve out space. We had to make sure we had the right equipment, the right everything. So it made it for us a harder decision than it would be now, because now we're all set up, we're operating. But if we move away from it and then at some point want to come back, we got to make those investments again, right? So it was a little bit more cost prohibitive.
Point.
So when we pulled the trigger, it was not an easy trigger to pull. Thank you, Judge.
Mayor's members council, thank you. So the next slide kind of details the other option, reason to stay independent with what I would call what we have now, where we have an independent magistrate, full council oversight. I think that kind of refers to there's the direct line of hierarchy of control, and you don't have the election cycle tied there. But you have the facilities, you have how people come into the office, you have control over the window and the customer service there, and the facilities in the judges' chambers here. Everything is solely under the control of the council and the city. Convenience to residents, kind of spoke to that. We have a city hall that's part of a park that is where they come to pay the water bill, they come to find their about their tickets and go to court. And so it's kind of this hub, as opposed to going down to the bigger courthouse with kind of it's just not as it's kind of, this is, I hate to say it, it's kind of like a very user-friendly court, and convenient, what people know. Again, continuity. We've had Judge Perlman how many years for? So 6, 8 years now? so 10 years of working. So you have some continuity there. There is an advantage for the fact that the city in Judge Perlman is a practicing attorney with a number of years of experience. Just so you know, a JP justice does not have to be a practicing attorney. And that's just doesn't mean that any one person can do a better job than any other person. It's just if you're looking at credentials. City satisfaction, I think this is where it gets really close to we're very happy with what we have right now. I'm very happy with the way that Deb and Penny have run the magistrate's office, the Perlman's oversight, and Judge Perlman's oversight, the flow of everything. Everything's run really well, and we haven't had many problems. I talked to Chief Walters, and he's very happy to have the court right across the street. So his people are not waiting and having to travel. And we have Sergeant Valenzuela. Any comments on the having this court here? I mean, that helps you and keeps everybody on time and everything. And jump up to the microphone real quick. And you got 90 seconds, but okay.
Welcome, Sergeant. Good to see you, sir.
Mayor, council. It's great for us because the quality of service to us is better. I've worked at both courts. I've been to both courts. I worked for the county forever, and I've worked here. I think it's nicer coming in here and talking to Judge Perlman, and it seems like it's more community-wise because we're there with the community. It's not just a court. We're there because when we figure it out, and whatever the judgment is, the judgment is. But it's still the way it's done, though. It's more for the people, but it's also for the officer. It's not where, no, we're going to dismiss it. It's more, hey, this is good. You're kind of at fault for this, but still, you guys did a good job at this. And that's a big thing, I think, especially with younger officers. They have to have that motivation where they know that they're doing something good. If they see every ticket they go in is getting dismissed, they're just going to stop doing it. They think to a point where, why am I wasting my time?
And it's not the, Mr. Mayor, Members of Council, it's not the other way. Judge Perlman's not a rubber stamp for you guys.
No.
So
No,
I've heard
not
that. So,
No, and he actually will educate a lot of the younger officers where they don't know what they're talking about when they go to court, and that's a big plus. Because you have a lot of bigger courts that you go to over years. I'm not saying Judge Ridden, but I'm saying that other judges would just say, oh, no, because you didn't say one word, you didn't say another word, and they wouldn't educate them on those things.
Mr. Mayor, Members of Council, any questions before we go on? Okay. Thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Mike. Jay.
Does, and I guess it could be to Judge Perlman too. Either, do we assign a police officer when you're in court to be here? Because I know when I was with the county, that was one of our big concerns is there was no security in the jail. That's why everything got changed downstairs with Brad and the people coming in.
If I could, I think that would be better for Judge Perlman when he gets up there.
All right,
I
that's
think
fine.
because with the beauty of it, when it's civil traffic, there's a cop here.
There's an officer there.
Yeah, and
I think if Judge Perlman actually asked us if there was a code enforcement, if there was an issue with that, any one of us would be over there in a heartbeat.
There's something that we have a history of.
But there's nobody assigned when you're having a court session.
Not a standard, not like you have court hours.
Okay, yeah, because I'll ask you some more questions about.
Okay, thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Jay.
And then I know, and Michelle's not available tonight, but Michelle has gotten a crash course in Perry Masonism. When Michelle, we represent ourselves. The city comes in and Michelle will present the case, and Judge Perlman's really good about going back and forth and giving an explanation of the process and what they're doing and asking the questions and politely putting, saying, okay, well, you can't really do that, and that's irrelevant, and like that. And it's an education process. And the more excited anybody gets, the more grandfatherly Judge Perlman gets in trying to guide them through there. And I will tell you, his Socratic questioning, usually by the end of the trial, the person that has been charged is already admitted to whatever. They're just upset about it. Okay, it's like, yeah, I do have a lot of weeds, but so does everybody else, So he kind of is really good at getting that out of there. Okay, so I'm trying to give it a pitch, but and then the city attorney has been working with Judge Perlman, and so he's real happy. When we do have when the other people bring in an attorney, we have to make sure we have attorney that's involved in that. So I'll stop there. And then the alignment of vision, which I think the fact is that we talked about this. We'd rather see the money spent on fixing up the blight than collecting the city coffers. Councilman Chipley, when you said the revenues, code revenues, minuscule. I don't think we have very much at all. I can't speak for traffic. I think Jeannie probably has a traffic number, but this court on code is not about collecting money. It's about getting them to invest in their house and finishing the code process. Judge Perlman, 3 to 5 minutes.
Honorable Mayor, Honorable Council, this evening. And I'm more than happy to bring everybody up to speed on where we're at on the court in terms of security and things like that. I want to point out, first off, that I was sworn in as an attorney in the state of Arizona in 1996. So as of May this year, that is 25 years. I have practiced solely from Globe, Arizona. I made it my home in 1996, and here I stand today. I have been a justice court judge pro tem on and off several times over the years. So I'm familiar with the county building and the county processes there. I will point out that I've quit being a justice court judge pro tem 3 times. Always because I knew that family is more important, and my family is here now, and they will always need justice court judges, and there may be a time for me to do that later. But anyway, the city court was moved from the county building. Everyone was saying 2014, but it was really in 2011. So that too, that's 10 years we've been here. The move was made in part because the elected judge at the time was a little bit difficult to deal with. My understanding is he walked into council and said, "That's my court, don't you tell me how to do anything in it." And council went, "Who is that guy?" And then he didn't seem to take our code seriously. And being an elected official, he needed to gather votes. And so one of the things he did was he went light on people, apparently. So I was asked to be the magistrate. I was more than happy to do so, and I agreed to do so. I was appointed by the council, thankfully. And we moved the court over here to the city. It took some retooling and some setup time and a little bit of money to get us up and running. But once we were up and running, as everyone is pretty well aware, looking back, we've been pretty well off the radar. There haven't been a lot of problems coming out of my court, and I'm very proud of that. I should also say that I'm extremely proud of Debbie Mayo. She's been my clerk the entire time we've been here. She runs the cogs, the machine that makes the court go. I make the decisions, but she makes the computers for her and the paper and stuff like that happen. Penny Mata is retiring. She retired this week, as everybody's aware. And she'll need to be replaced. We are interviewing. We have 3 applicants, and we're beginning interviews on Friday morning. So we're going to see if we can find a good fit. I believe that based on the minimum accounting standards that are required of all courts, we have to have 2 clerks. And we have to have 2 clerks so that when any one of them handles money, either in or out, payments or disbursements, that a second clerk can check off their work so that no one is ever working alone with money. There's always someone looking over their shoulder. Security is a big issue in courts these days. There have been a number of high-profile incidents occurring in courts, and security efforts had to be ramped up. In 2017, the Chief Justice of the Arizona Supreme Court, Scott Bales, issued a judicial order that said within 2 years we have to have all of the Arizona courts compliant with minimum security standards. And so an effort was undertaken to make all of the Arizona courts, whatever level, magistrate courts through Arizona Superior Court, super safe for everybody, for the judges, for the jurors, for the public, for everybody. So we began to undertake some security upgrades. Everybody is well aware of the security upgrades that were made in council chambers, for example, and I won't go into those. Additionally, in the clerk's offices, bullet-resistant glass was implemented. Locking doors that were accessible by code were implemented. A safe storage room with reverse locks so that if the clerks needed to shelter in place, they could just do so. Panic duress alarms were installed. So a number of security steps were undertaken by this court. That was part of the retooling, but retooling is kind of an ongoing thing. There's a retooling and then there's a new tooling. So new tooling has taken place. In 2019, my court was audited, and that was an entire financial audit as well as a security concerns audit. It was mostly financial, however. And there were a couple of minor upgrades that had to be done there too. For example, we had shared a safe with the city, and the Administrative Office of the Courts, AOC, said that doesn't work. You need your own safe, and it has to be bolted down so somebody can't pick it up and roll it out. And so we procured a safe and checked that issue off the list. So Councilman Pastor, you asked about whether or not we have an officer stationed in the court during court proceedings. Our magistrate court is one of the lowest level courts in terms of what cases come through and the volume of those cases. In all civil traffic cases, the citation is issued by an officer. In order to proceed on that ticket, the officer has to appear. So by virtue of civil traffic, there's an implication that an officer will be present. There are times when an officer doesn't appear. They may get called out to something else, more pressing than a hearing, and they've got to go do it. And there are times when a defendant will come in and that officer isn't present. But in every case that I can remember thinking back, there's not been a defendant in the courtroom by themselves. There's always been another officer for another case present. Because the officers tend to come in early, they tend to talk a little bit of shop, and one after another, they come up and do their cases. So more likely than not, there's at least one officer present, sometimes more. One of the logistic pluses of having the magistrate court where we stand today is that the police office is directly across the street. And in the times that we've requested an officer to be here or to be in the front offices where the water offices are, they're there in less than a minute. They don't have to get into a car. They might have to get out of a car because they're in a car, but they don't have to drive anywhere. They just trot on over and open the door and they're here. So as a security concern, in terms of how quickly we can get help, we can get it really quickly. That sort of segues into the efficiency of having our court in this building. If Sergeant Valenzuela has to go to the county building to handle a traffic ticket, he may have to wait in line. He'll certainly have had to drive there. He'll have had to park, secure his vehicle, deal with security, although he gets pretty much of a pass to walk on in. But it will take his time. And given the volume of other cases that flow through the justice court, he may have to wait a little while. It's just the nature of the business. So his time is a little bit less efficient as opposed to just crossing the street when he's supposed to be here at 10:45 and doing his case and going back out. Likewise, Michelle Yurkovich, code enforcement officer, her office is right behind council chambers. She needs an exhibit, she can hop up, she can ask for a brief recess, hop up, go get it, come back in, have copies made, distribute them as necessary. She would have to drive over to the county offices, deal with security. She might too have to wait a little while. And certainly she couldn't fetch up an exhibit if she needed to. For the city attorney, Bill Sims, he regularly calls in. So it wouldn't probably make too much difference to him. But for everybody else, having our court in our complex, our city complex, affects our efficiency. It improves everybody's efficiency. I've been talking nonstop. So I'm going to take a breath. And I'm going to tell council and everybody else who's here and listening that I'm extremely proud of myself to be your magistrate judge. I take remarkable pride in being your judge. It's a pinnacle point in my career, and I hold dearly onto it. I know that Judge Reardon is younger than I am. He's up and coming. He's making waves, and he would love to have this feather in his cap. But I think he's got other feathers in his cap as well. I really don't. This is my pinnacle point. And so I take it very seriously. I want to do the best thing for the city, for the council, and for our community. And I believe that my experience as an attorney and my experience as your magistrate judge helped me do that. I love being able to trot over here from my office, hear cases, and trot back to my office, get a call from Debbie that there's something else we need to handle, and I trot back over and get it done. I just love that. So if we think we can save a few $1,000s, maybe $50,000 by moving the court, I will tell you that the difference between that $50,000 and having it and not having it really is a couple of good months of heavy traffic enforcement. I'm a trier of fact. I'm of the legislative branch. I'm sorry, the judicial branch. You are of the legislative branch. The police are of the executive branch. I can't go, and I won't go to the executive branch and say, you guys need to write more tickets. Please, can you write more tickets and get our revenue up? I can't do that. I won't do that. That's up to the executive branch. They have to determine how they're going to use their resources. The legislative branch could do that. They could say, hey, we want more traffic enforcement. You could go to the executive branch and do that. I won't. It's not my place. So, if it's a matter of money and it's just a matter of money, then certainly the city could save some money by moving over to the Justice Court. If it's a matter of community pride, if it's a matter of the integrity that the city holds with its citizens, then I think we should stay put. It's been 10 years. We could do another 10 years and then revisit it.
Mr. Mayor,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mariano.
couple questions for you.
Yes, sir.
You just described the present, and a good present it is. Without holding your feet to the fire, I want to talk metrics for a second, then I want to jump to, based on that, to what you see for the future. Your current rate of cases, not putting you on the spot, has it grown in the last 10 years?
So here's where we started. And it wasn't quite 10 years ago. But there was a company that came along and sold the city a contract for photo enforcement. And photo enforcement was going to be a wave of income. It was anticipated that Redflex, that's the company,
was going to be issuing thousands and thousands of civil traffic citations. And they set up some cameras. I will tell you that at first I really didn't like the idea of red flex, an automated system to catch people breaking the law and issuing them electronic tickets, if you will. Once I got to know the evidence, I've never seen better. And for red light enforcement, it was phenomenal because there could be an accident and both drivers could be knocked unconscious and both said I had a green when they came to, and we would watch that video and there it was, one car coming right on through in the red, boom, and it was fabulous evidence. My goal at that time was going to be, or my dream for the future was going to be that I would become a red flex photo enforcement expert after about 5 years and thousands of tickets. That didn't happen. There was a huge wave of tickets, and then the contract was terminated, and red flex was set packing. And we went back to human enforcement, officer interaction and enforcement, which is fine. As to the metrics, of course, the case numbers went precipitously down. Over time, and I've done some analysis a couple of times, and there are waves, there are cycles of traffic enforcement. And it depends, I think, on what grants the police department is getting, what the governor's office is telling them they need to do. DUI enforcement is a biggie. So when they get a grant to do DUI enforcement, they've got to use that money. They've got to spend that money and do what the governor is telling them to do. So it cycles. I wouldn't say that in 10 years it's gone continuously up, and I wouldn't say it's gone continuously down. I would say that it has cycled over that period of time. You also asked me about my view or vision of the future. Where are we going to be? None of us knows. I can't make a prediction.
It's a good point. However, you have the experience, and you certainly have a handle on how your court is functioning. What I'm after is, and we're talking about a $50,000 question. What I'm after is your rate of cases going to be enough to justify another position in 5 years or 3 years or what have you? You tell us you need 2 clerks, and you got to go for that, and I understand that. That's reality. That's today. The point I'm trying to make is there may be a point down the road where that 50,000 may be something we need to look at. It may not be today that we need to make that jump to refer to a higher volume court that can handle a higher volume for us. That may not be today, but what I'm after is I see today's staffing. I get it. I see today's numbers, metrics, and red flex. Well, that's another matter. All I'm asking is, do you see at a point in time, without holding your feet to the fire, you'll need another 1 or 2 more staff members going down the road? Because this is what I see. I like what I see and hear. Right now, I'm not inclined to hand that over to county. And you're looking at a county employee for 26 years. You know, they took in everything at that time. I'm not convinced right now that that kind of a cost adjustment or saving is something that's worthy enough for us to consider based on what you're telling us about and what the PD is telling us about enforcement, efficiency, a minute away. Those are the things I like to hear when it comes to government.
Sure.
The efficiencies of being close. And this certainly is a busy place, by the way. I was here today and people were running down the hallway. Paul, you have a good operation. Thank God they're young and can run.
So that's an interesting point and a good one. I don't know how many times I've turned to my clerk after we wrap up the hearings and I say, I wish we had more hearings. I love doing these. we could deal with a whole lot more hearings and be fine. I really don't think that it would change. It's not like we're going to need a third clerk or a second judge or something like that. I think we could certainly increase the volume of cases that we have. I would be fearful, I think, rather than fearful of that, I'd be fearful of a precipitous decline in civil traffic citations. If the police enforcement if the governor were to say, that's it, don't write another civil traffic citation, and tell all the chiefs, that's it, we're not doing civil traffic citation, then I'd say, you know what, there's no point in keeping it. But I don't see that trend happening. I think the population of our state is increasing. The population of Globe, I've been here 25 years. I've watched the population of Globe increase. There aren't fewer cars. There are lots more. More cars means more civil traffic violations and likely more civil traffic enforcement. I don't see that trend going away. I see that trend increasing.
Okay. You answered my questions. Thank you, sir.
Fernando?
So thank you for correcting the date because I thought I was going crazy. I'm like, no, that.
Sorry about that.
Did you guys leave and then come back? Or I'm like, okay, no. Anyways, at the time that we decided to pull the trigger and move the magistrate back in-house, our police department had written 185 tickets the entire year before that for traffic. You could just be in front of my office and only write tickets to people doing 15 over, and you could write probably 100 a day. Okay, so they weren't doing a lot of traffic enforcement, and it was because they were discouraged. It didn't work out. It wasn't happening. It was
And I understand Miami's had a similar problem.
right. Yeah, and so, and to me, my community is too important to. And if it was just Jordan and Jordan was going to be there, and I knew he was going to be there forever, I have a lot of more faith in Jordan. But I think keeping it in house to me is done us well. Yes, we did have photo radar at that time, and yes, that was bringing in significantly more revenue. But the community decided they want to do something different, and I totally get that. But I feel like we have a responsive magistrate, and we're able to get through our code enforcement. And there's been a couple times where I didn't agree with code enforcement, but the law was the law, the rule was the rule. They didn't have the ability to make a common sense decision, but you did, and you did. And so it's like, well, just go in front of the judge. If the circumstances are out of your control, there's nothing you can do until a later day. I'm sure he'll see that, and I'm sure we'll work around it. And you did.
I'm very happy to take time with the code enforcement cases. We have some they're done on the first hearing because the person got with it, they got compliant, whatever it was, and they're done. That first hearing is virtually a non-hearing. We have others. We have one it's gone on for months, and my initial ruling was to get that person into their own yard. It's just too much stuff piled up on their porch and in their yard, which is in the bigger scheme of things not very big, but they just can't seem, because of their own mental status, they just can't seem to get it together and get it cleaned up. So I've begun to drop the monetary hammer. At first it was $50 towards the fine, and that didn't seem to make a difference, so now it's $100 towards the fine. And I pointed out that when that fine is paid, they're subject to a new citation and we can start over. And and eventually I think that person will come around and clean up their yard. I love taking the time to get those things to happen. As for the officers coming into court, again, I've got some time, and if I need to help the younger officers so that they use the right language when they're in court, it gives them confidence, it gives them proficiency, and they take that proficiency with them from my court into other courts, and they do a better job. It's tough to be an officer and deal with the public on one hand, deal with all of the administrative requirements of being an officer on another hand, and go to court and stand next to a defendant and have to present present a case to the court that the court can latch onto and hang on to. It's not easy, and it's a long educational curve for officers. I love being able to take the time to do it.
Question?
Answered all my questions.
Mr. Mayor, let me wrap this up then. Again, we were back there. Like I say, we believe that the public is well served. I've been to many court cases here, and both sides walk out feeling like they got a fair shake and they were treated well, and that's priceless. Like I say, the money is well spent. Staff recommends no change going forward in the budget process, other than we'll take the second full time and we'll take that down to a 30-hour benefited position. And unless I hear a direction, I'd like to see a nod of heads whether you'd like to support keeping the independent option, or would you give direction to seek a MOU to do the co-location option?
I think we've had two already voice their here.
Right,
Yes, sir.
absolutely. We have life tickets. Appreciate everything you.
Thank you.
We go back a few years. I've been on council with that. Phenomenal.
Thank you.
Top-notch. Things are going.
I appreciate you guys. I also appreciate all of the support, from the police department and code enforcement, and the city attorney. Everybody, it's a very supportive crew, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Mayor.
I'd just like to say on Jordan's behalf, there's no disrespect or, not at all. Just, you'll get my vote, don't worry, but.
Well, and Mr. Mayor, members of council, it's important that this is a major decision. This is a tough choice between two good options. And this is why I wanted to have you have this conversation, take the time to see both sides, hear from both sides, and make that decision. And so we thank Jordan for the conversation and the options that he's presented to the city, and then for you making your choices.
Freddie, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So I've been sitting here listening to both judges make their positions known and their thoughts and pros and cons, I guess we'll call them. I want to thank Judge Reardon for bringing this opportunity to the city and allowing us to have an opportunity to look at other avenues. I do appreciate that. I also believe that I am of the belief that, if it's not broken, why fix it? What we're really looking at right now, the securities have been addressed. So really what it boils down to are, what are the costs versus benefits when it comes to a decision like this? And we have to make a decision based on what's happening today. And I understand, and I also agree with Councilman Gonzalez's thoughts as, what is coming down the path? What can we expect? What can we anticipate? And, that's the $1 million question. Nobody anticipated COVID, but it hit us like a rock. And so, I just feel like our decision making, we must base our decisions on what's real today and what's happening today. I appreciate the fact that, the locality of the central hub of our court system, our police department, our public works, I'm not our public works, but our code enforcement, how that response time, time is money. And the more time you spend away from your case, then it's, that it's a cost. I also really appreciate that what I'm hearing today is it's the fabric of the city is what we're looking at. We've got this, a couple of threads and stitches from the police department and from code enforcement, from Judge Perlman, the educating of young officers, that just weaves and creates a fabric of unity, and it really just creates a prideful outcome, and not just an outcome, but a prideful outlook, and everybody can just feel good about what we're doing for our city. And so I just, at this point, I don't feel that there's enough. We've had a broken department before, not too long ago, and it took us, this council and prior council, quite a bit of work to fix that department. If there's nothing broken here, I don't know why we need to look at a fix. And, we've got some council members here that remember what it was like to move and come back. And I appreciate Fernando sharing that information, because there's even a cost for moving and relocating and things like that. So, and those are real, true, hard costs. So, I appreciate you both. But at this point, I'm gonna nod to stay the way we are.
Thank you. Mike, do you have any comments?
I will just say that, experienced Judge Perlman's actions in court and everything. I think he's very fair. I've known him for many years. He's done a good job. Jordan, I've just met the last few years when he's started his quest to be JP in Gila County, and he's a good man too. But I will tell you that I had an issue that Debbie helped me with very, very smoothly. It went so smooth. I couldn't believe how easy it was to take care of the matter. And I think they do a good job, and it's a reflection on how they work together. So I don't have a problem with Judge Perlman. I think he's good for the city.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, my comment is that, I agree with the rest of the council. I want to thank Judge Reardon for bringing this forward to give us an option. You do an amazing job in the JP court. Judge Perlman, I've seen your work and your professionalism, and you are right. This atmosphere, just coming here, coming here for a ticket or something like that, it makes it difficult when you have to go through security and then you're waiting in line, the anticipation. I think that this is a better atmosphere for our community. It's more of our style that we want to see. I know the process is fair, and you treat it, and there is compassion with everything that you do. So I do support you, and I would like to see our court stay here.
Honorable Mayor and Council, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you. So we have a clear direction, and we're also looking into what it would take to broadcast these hearings to see what you might go viral with Judge Perlman. But no, and I think the last part, the only thing left is the update.
Yes,
on
budget process review.
Just what we've talked about before. On next Tuesday on the 8th, we'll have review of the line item, the water and sewer, the enterprise funds, and then review of the CIP with general funds, which will include pool, parks, some of the grants that we were looking at, a lot of the meat and potatoes of the benefits that seem to be coming down the pike, and we'll be looking for council direction as to approve those. And then the final meeting on the 22nd, where we'll look at the department fixes and what options we have about shoring up some of the employment situations. That'll be on the 22nd. Mr. Mayor, that's unless there's any questions, that's kind of the schedule. That 22nd we'll do tentative budget adoption, and then in first meeting in July we'll do final budget adoption, and that'll be it.
Okay. Motion for adjournment. Motion is second for adjournment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Meeting adjourned.
Aye.